natural selection is a mechanical, blind, automatic force. It's not, I can't say it's not guided, but there's no need for it to be guided. The whole point is that it works without guidance.
But it could be guided. Or do you completely shut that out?
I mean, why bother when you've got a perfectly good explanation that doesn't involve guidance?
I mean, the
why
point is, you use words like blind and automatic. This watch is blind and automatic, but it's been designed. The words themselves do not shut out that notion. And it seems to me that the impression I'm getting is that what's coming through is that the whole process is so sophisticated, it itself is giving evidence of a rational mind behind it. But am I understanding you right, that you say you deny that because you have an in-principle reason for denying it? That is, everything must, as far as you're concerned, go from the simple to the complex. And therefore, your major argument in the God delusion, if I understand it right, is that God is, by definition, more complex than the thing you're explaining, so he's got to be explained. Is that right? That
is a major point that I want to make. But let me go back to what you were saying before about guidance. When you drop a stone, it falls to the ground,
yes.
and you as a scientist will explain that by gravity. You wouldn't dream of saying, oh, there must be a God pushing it down. That's exactly what you're in effect saying with respect to evolution. Because we understand evolution in just the same kind of level as actually rather better level than we understand gravity.
No, and this is a very important point, because I detected in many of your writings that you oppose God and science as explanations. When Newton discovered the law of gravity, he didn't say, marvelous, now I can know how it works, I don't need God. God is an explicator at the level of an agent, not a mechanism. So that we can study mechanisms in biology. The more sophisticated they are, the more that might well point towards an agent. You don't argue away the existence of an agent by showing that there is a mechanism. And I don't quite understand how you manage to get, if I understand you right, God and science as alternative explanations.
Well, I think you do get rid of an agent if the agent is superfluous to the explanation. That when you're studying something that's happening, there may well be an agent, and it may, if you're watching a car driving along and avoiding obstacles and turning left and turning right, you say there is an agent controlling that car, and certainly there is. There's a driver. But if you don't need an agent to explain what's going on, and we don't in the case of biology, and we don't in the case of gravity. Of course, I accept that Newton was a theist. He lived in the 17th century and everybody was. But you don't need an agent. An agent is a superfluous explanation. It's a gratuitous grafting on of something that you don't need.
Well, I find that unconvincing, because even if you accept the whole evolutionary paradigm, it depends on there being a fine-tuned universe. And that fine-tuned universe raises in itself very big questions as to the origin of the universe. Evolution doesn't deal with that.
No, it doesn't.
Nor does it deal with the origin of life.
No, those are separate points.
Those are separate points, but they're vastly major points.
They are, yes.
And says your position is the argument from personal credulity, that rationality comes from irrationality, that mind comes from matter. To me, the biblical explanation in the beginning was the word, the logos. That makes perfect sense, and it makes sense of the fact that we can do science itself.
But you haven't explained where the logos came from in the first place.
Well, of course not, because the logos didn't come from anywhere.
Well, then, in what sense is it an explanation?
Because the notion that you say you have to ask who created the logos, that says that you're thinking of a created God. The whole point about the God revealed in the Bible is that he was not created. He is eternal. He is the eternal logos. And I ask myself, as an inference to the best explanation, which makes more sense? That there's an eternal logos and that the universe, its laws, the capacity for mathematical description and so on, that these things are derivative, including the human mind, from the logos, that makes very much more sense to me as a scientist than it's the other way round, when there is no explanation for the existence of the universe. Do you just believe the universe is a brute fact?
The universe is an easier brute fact to accept than a conscious creator.
Well, who made it?
It's you who insists on asking that question.
No, you asked me who made the creator. The universe created you, Richard. Who made it then?
A god is a complicated entity which requires a much more sophisticated and difficult explanation than a universe, which is, according to modern physics, a very simple entity. It's a very simple beginning. It's not a negligible beginning, but it's a very simple beginning. That has got to be easier to explain than something as complicated as a god.
Yeah, you can't explain the existence of God, but I think you may have missed my question. I'm drawing a parallel. You see, you say that it's, at least, don't let me put words in your mouth, of course, because that would be unfair, but I'm getting the message that it's ridiculous for me to believe in a God who created the universe and me, because I have to ask who created God. All I'm doing is turning that question round and saying, the universe, you admit, created you because there's nothing else. Well, then who created it?
I understand you perfectly. I'm making the... We both of us are faced with the problem of saying, how did things start?
Yes.
I'm saying it's a hell of a lot easier to start with something simple than to start with something complex. That's what complex means.
But I don't think so. If I pick up a book called The God Delusion, it's a pretty sophisticated book. It's got lots of words in it. But actually, as I look at page 1, I don't even need to go beyond page 1, I conclude that it comes from something more complex than that book itself, namely you. In your world, where is justice to be found?
Well, justice is a human construct of great importance in human affairs, and it's something that most of us have a sense of. Which I think probably can be given some sort of Darwinian explanation, but I don't see where you're taking this.
Well, my question is there any ultimate justice? You see, you say this is petty. I'm saying I find myself in a world which is a broken world. I find myself in a world where there's massive injustice, where many people won't get it. We're so privileged. We live in Oxford and so on. We've got enough money to live on, etc., etc. But if there is no God, then there's no ultimate justice. And one of the things that the resurrection transforms for me from pettiness right into center stage is, if this is true, then there's real hope that there'll be a rational evaluation and fair justice at the end of the world. But atheism doesn't give you that.
Okay, suppose there is no hope, suppose there is no justice, suppose there's nothing but misery and darkness and bleakness, suppose there is nothing that we would wish for, nothing that we would hope for. Too bad. That doesn't make it true just because God would make us feel good.
Well, of course it doesn't.
Well, then why do you bring that argument up?
Because I believe that there is evidence that it is true. So the fact that the claim of Christ to be the truth, to be God incarnate, that makes perfect sense to me, because if there is a God who invented this wonderful, marvelous universe with all its science and all the rest, then he has taken the initiative in getting to know us and revealing himself to us. And he's revealed himself to us at the level we can understand. We're persons, he's a person. That at least makes sense. So one of the very important questions to ask is that really true? Or is this simply myth and fantasy?
Well, myth and fantasy for me.
Yeah, well, do you know, that disturbs me for the following reason. Reading your book, The God Delusion, you say that it's under scholarly dispute among historians that Jesus actually existed. Now, I checked with the ancient historians. That is not so. And it disturbed me. History is not natural science. But what I don't understand is this: why you would write something like that.
I don't think it's a very important question whether Jesus existed. There are some historians, most historians think he did, some historians
They certainly
don't.
do. I couldn't find an ancient historian that didn't. Well, it's an image of God that I find strange in a way. I gather from the BBC today that you're promoting some advert on London buses, which is going to say something like, there probably is no God, so don't worry and enjoy your life. Now, I was very interested in that. Why don't worry? Do you associate the idea of God with worrying?
I fought for a better slogan than that. This was something that was devised by a woman on the Guardian, and she wanted to raise money from £5 here, £5 there to put this advertisement on the London buses. I offered to match donations, and I said I'd rather change the slogan from there probably is no God to there almost certainly is no God. And I didn't want to say don't worry and enjoy your life. I wanted to say something like live your life to the full. But it was too late to change it, and I'm since the money has been raised in the first day, something like £23,000 had already been raised, and she was only hoping for 5,500. I'm going to get some say in what the next slogan is, and it's not going to say what the present one does.
But from where I sit, you see, the thing that my relationship with God is the very thing that stops the worry and gives me the fullness of life. And we're back to the pettiness, because if God is real and has revealed himself, then it's through a relationship with him that we really can enjoy a full life, science included. I get the impression that you're not taking history really seriously. Otherwise, you'd interact with it. And I'm trying to get to the basis of why that is so, because you regard what Jesus has done and who he is as petty. And I find the contrast between standing tall in a silent and cold universe with no hope, believing that your moral sense must ultimately be illusion. You're crying for justice because most people will never get it, because death ends everything. The contrast between that and enjoying the friendship, the personal friendship of God, and knowing that ultimate justice will be done, is immense.
Well,
but the basic question is it true or not?
Yeah, that is the basic question. It is completely irrelevant if it's comforting, if it gives you hope, if it gives you happiness. That has nothing to do with whether it's true.
That I agree with entirely.
So we need to know whether it's true.
Yes.
Now, when you look at history, and let's leave aside, maybe I alluded to the possibility that some historians think Jesus never existed. I take that back. Jesus existed.
I can make it worse for you.
I know you can.
Because Jesus actually claimed to be the Logos that created the whole universe. And if this is the Creator incarnate, making water into wine and so on is really a triviality. The more fundamental thing is the fact that he claimed to be and gave evidence that he was God. When you say it's anti-scientific, I don't think it's anti-scientific at all. Science cannot say that miracles do not occur. It can say they're highly improbable. But nobody is claiming that these things occurred by natural processes. They occurred because God fed his power in. Nor did the whole universe, if we look at it, occur in that sense by natural processes. God created it. We study all the natural processes within it. So when you say it's anti-scientific, I think it's not anti-scientific.